Okay, in this video we're going to be talking about anxiety and also our inability to focus. Two strange bedfellows, I realise, but it's in this video that we're going to be entirely focusing on these. Focusing is the right word, isn't it? Focusing on our eyes, and I'm going to provide you with some tools about how you can dampen certain responses and also enhance your ability to focus. So, let's start off with an interesting fact. Did you know that a part of our brain is in our eyes? No, actually, let's put it another way. These are actually connected, are a part of our brain. So these are just a part of our brain that's outside of the cranial wall, which kind of makes sense, doesn't it? When you think about it, if our body and brain are in this constant state of trying to save us from harm, trying to make sure that we survive, hence why our mind, you might want to put it, is constantly chucking in warning signs, which are linked to your fight, flight, which are linked to your anxiety and stress and other psychological conditions. There's a very reason why those that suffer from trauma, for example, which is pertinent because I'm about to finish my program on trauma, that those that suffer from trauma, of course, are constantly being reminded of that event because our brain is trying to save you from experiencing that event again. It thinks that that color over there or that car over there or the weather or whatever it might be, any kind of stimuli is similar to that traumatic event. So therefore it's saying, whoa, hang on a minute, this happened last time, you better be careful. So let's just replay that image or replay the conversation or replay the event in your mind so that we stop you from doing the same thing again. So our mind is always our friend. It may not feel like it, it's always our friend, just trying to keep us from harm. The more you make friends with this, the easier your life becomes, because you realize that this, just like a lot of your friends in real life, give you advice that's based on outdated knowledge or poor data. But those friends are still trying to help you. They're trying to keep you from harm or just trying to give you good advice. They don't know that their advice is from the past. So that's what your mind is doing all the time. So the sooner you make friends with your mind, call it a name if you want, make friends with your mind. It makes your life a lot easier. Now, why don't we start off with focus? And it's worth stating at this point that our mind follows our visual system. And interestingly, and I only found this out recently, every time we blink, we reset our perception of time, which is interesting, isn't it? So this is pertinent, because if you, like me, occasionally suffer from the inability to focus, and by the way, I've got other tools that I turn to for this as well, but this little trick is quite a cool idea, and it's one that you develop over time. So what you do, and I'll tell you what you do first, then I'll tell you why you do it, is you pick a point somewhere, could be on the wall, could be outside, and then you stare at it for 120 seconds and you try not to blink. Remember, when you blink, you reset the perception of time. Now, what this does is it fights your impulses. So we know, of course, that part reason why we have this inability these days to focus is because of this technology, especially our phones. And the constant distracting methods used in marketing, etc. So that hasn't helped. And that's further exacerbated this impulse that we have to move. We're constantly thinking about moving to the next thing and finding the next thing, being excited about the next thing. What you're doing by training yourself on this set task is that you are telling your brain that you are now doing this one task. And at some point, your brain and you will think, whilst you're staring at that point in the wall, that this is boring. Your brain is going to say, no, this is boring. Let's go and do something else. And you will sense the urge to move your eyes, to do something else. And all you're doing when you're practicing this is you're fighting that impulse. That is it. You just fight the impulse. Try, if you can, to do it without blinking. Some of you won't be able to do that. That's no problem. You don't have to start again. Just be aware that you were blinking or that you were trying to suppress the urge to blink. Again, it's not important. the point here really is in this total focus on the one task at hand, 120 seconds staring at the same point on the wall or wherever it might be, and feeling and being aware of that impulse. What happens is this: once you've become aware of that impulse, when you then experience that impulse in other areas of your life, you will recognize it. Your brain will recognize it. And you might initially be able to suppress that impulse. In time, if you keep practicing this, you will be able to suppress that impulse because you'll recognize it all the time. It's a bit like when you develop that understanding of the messages that you get from the gut, if you're doing intermittent fasting, or the messages that you get from the body when you're exercising. There's always a point at which, once you've really learned what's going on in there, there's always a point at which when you say, okay, yeah, I get what that message is. That's the same here. You will be able to understand that impulse, and when you're next sat in front of a computer and you get the impulse to move or the impulse to do something else, you'll be able to recognize it and you'll go, no, I'm going to continue, thanks very much. Now, obviously, I should have a caveat here. One of the things that I always bang on about on my course actually is that really we should move. If we're sat down at work, we should be moving every 45 minutes to an hour. We know that, and therefore, if you are working and you're fighting that impulse to move, bear in mind that you don't want to do that too long. At some point you do want to move, go and do some push-ups, do some squats, go and walk around in nature, go and speak to somebody and have a positive conversation with them. You need to do that. That is really important. There's no point fighting this impulse for 5 hours because that's not going to do you any good either. The point of this really is just to make sure that you can stay on the one task for, say, an hour or less and get your work done. So it's great if you're at university right now. So now let's look at anxiety. And this next idea falls into the camp of EMDR, the therapy EMDR. And probably for most people until recently, the whole idea of this eye movement therapy would have seemed a little bit woo-woo. But luckily, there are now some studies showing brain imaging of the results from moving your eyes in a particular fashion. And this is where the whole anxiety comes in. This also, by the way, works if you are afraid of doing something, or if there's something that you think you really ought to do, but you can't be bothered, or you're just feeling a bit tired or lacking in energy. This works for that too. The whole idea is this. You simply, for 30 seconds, move your eyes laterally. So you're literally doing this. I don't know whether you can see that. Anyway, I'm moving my eyes left and right. It would help if I had really bright blue eyes, wouldn't it? So you just simply move your eyes left to right for 30 seconds. That is it. And what that does is it desensitizes and shuts down the response in the amygdala. So the amygdala, again, this is something I talk about on my trauma program, is part of that Neanderthal brain, and it's linked to our fight-flight response. It's where we have that kind of sensory response. So when we experience life, the brain records that experience, and when it records it, it goes through the amygdala first before it stores it in the hippocampus and then sends it to the neocortex. So what is happening with the amygdala is that when it's there, it's linked to that fight-flight response, which is why when you're experiencing anxiety, you've got this kind of surge in adrenaline or epinephrine and cortisol, and it just doesn't feel very nice. Well, you can slow that down, you can shut that down simply for 30 seconds, moving your eyes from left to right. Seems a bit crazy, but it works. So by doing this, it's a way of saying to the brain that it's okay. Let's further explain that. So when you are outside, your eyes move from left to right naturally when you're moving forward. And this is the interesting bit, I suppose, about the fight-flight. When you're in fight-flight, you're in this state of typically either standing still motionless or running away from the danger, or very rarely moving forward towards the danger. When you're moving forward towards the danger, you're telling your brain that this is okay, I can handle this. So when you're walking forward, your eyes naturally look left and right. They have to take in the world around us. So that's why this works. You're effectively telling your brain that you're moving forward. You're just doing it in a kind of an imaginative fashion. You don't have to move forward. You just simply need to move your eyes left and right. That tells your brain that everything is okay. We can handle this situation. So there we are. Really interesting facts. I think they're interesting. I'm sure you will do. Go ahead, try these ideas, especially that one staring at a point in the wall, because it'd be interesting to see how you fare, because it's not something that's going to work straight away. You need to do it for a period of time, and that will again suppress that impulse for you to move and do something else. Okay, and if you like this video, I'm getting used to saying this now. I'm so British. So if you like this video, do please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, because not only does it help me, but it helps push this out to other people that might well need it too. Sounds so altruistic, doesn't it? Sounds so rubbish too. At the end of the day, it's helping me grow the channel. So I'd really appreciate it. If you like what you see, then you're probably going to like a few other videos too that are in my channel, especially if you're into breath work, cold therapy. Do try out my breath work tracks. Anyway, I'll shut up now. Thank you for watching. Goodbye for now.